have two gentlemen in the studio with me, both human capital development experts. We're going to be talking about that, Bisi Adeyemi and Mike Adeleye. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for sitting with me. So we've listened to that report. Let's start off our conversation from there. Nigeria is ranked 152 out of 187 countries polled in this recent report by UNDP. Mike, let me start with you. What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you very much. Obviously, if you listen to the Honorable Aganga from what he said, obviously, he was trying to give credit, which was good, about the economic development. And similarly to the Minister of Information as well. Well, they're forgetting the fact that the UN, the Human Development Index is actually not measured with just economic growth. It has to comprise both economic growth and social development as well, which is what are the two that is actually being used to measure. Now, if we should be talking about how, let's say, recently we've just been rated one of the fastest developing nations in Africa. Fantastic. But what about our social development? We're talking about life expectancy at birth. We're talking about GNI per capita. We're talking about education, literacy. Where are all these things? And these are the critical tools that the UN, what's it called?
UNDP.
UNDP actually use as a tool to measure and rank countries that are actually being developed. So we should be looking into all these areas, which I think we should be talking about today, and the solution and what the government should be doing to actually bring about all this mechanism to rank us. Because in the world, 152 out of 187 countries. In Africa, we are 22 out of 50 countries. It's not looking good at all.
Bisi, what are your thoughts on this?
Firstly, I have to say that, well, Nigerian, we don't have that statistics that could give us that that leverage when it comes to rating like this, because when it comes to Nigeria, they have to deal with statistics that we have on ground. But saying that, you see, I even think that position, that ranking is even generous, because when you look at defining poverty, according to the administrator, when she was actually doing the launching, that was like a month ago, she said something about income. When you define poverty by income and you define poverty by multidimensional index, he said when you define poverty by income, that means that, well, what you said when you were opening the program, that, well, we live under $1.25.
Yeah. That's about 203 naira.
Yeah.
203 naira.
Yeah.
And another one, when you define it by multidimensionally, is that when you spend 80% of your income on basic things, food, when you spend 80% of your income on food, transport, shelter, that is poverty. And to be truthful with ourselves, that's what is happening in Nigeria. Let me read something to you. Page 42, they said something here. Said, and you know, when they were writing this report, they were talking generally. They were talking about Nigeria alone, and they said something here. Page 40 said, economic growth that does not generate decent employment is unlikely to foster human development. See that? You see, we've been told lies about our economy growing, because they said something about, in that report again, talking about the vulnerability cycle. 3 things, because we are vulnerable in Nigeria. 3 things. They said that first one is the first 1,000 days of a child. And look at that. That's where you have problems with our health care. Then I said, when you transit from school, that's the second one now, transiting from school to employment. And you know that is not easy in Nigeria. And the third one, when you transit from work to retirement, and you see that we still have people queuing up to collect their pensions, and they are saying that these are the indices that these people are using. And in Nigeria, these things are not available. So I even think the ranking is generous.
So let's talk about that part where you said we've been told lies. Who's been telling us lies? Because you see, if the financial authorities have looked at the GDP growth, have looked at growth the way it is, and projected that we're growing as fast as, 6.5 to 7%, and international monetary agencies have also supported that. In fact, they've generously said, let me use your word, that we're growing at a fast pace of 7%. Where is the lies in this? Is it the fact that we do not have statistics to show that, or we actually do not have what's on ground to show that we're actually growing at the pace that we're growing at?
If I may come in there again, obviously, we're all talking about the economic development. We're not talking about the social. So in one sense, what he's saying, what my colleague here is saying, I mean, obviously, is is right to an extent, because obviously we're not being given the right figures, to be quite honest. Because if we all focusing on about economic development all along, that unfortunately, that is not only the areas where the UN is actually using to measure us.
I just want us to establish that fact, that what we're talking about is the fact that economic growth, the projection for economic growth is okay.
It's okay.
But the projection for the social development is not. So
it's not.
I want us to get that into proper context, that it's not that we've been told lies about the economic growth.
No, we've not.
About
statistics.
But it's the social development that we're particularly
we need to really,
about. Okay, so let's carry on. Now, that report also shows that Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, had the second highest rate of progress in terms of income, health, and education. And recently, at the World Economic Forum that just ended, we talked about the theme was actually forging inclusive growth and creating jobs. And there were so many discussions, and different proponents were put forward. Do you think that we've actually run with those suggestions, or we're still picking our way?
I think we're still picking our ways. I mean, if you recollect, the last time I was here, I actually lay emphasis on the GSI under the SHOP program. I mean, we have policies, good policies in place, but the implementation is what the problem is. Now, if we need to create jobs, where are the jobs? And we hear all these figures that 1-point-something million were created in the economy last year. Who are these people? Who created this job? Is it by the government policies, or from the private sector, or from the public sector? We need to have a clear distinct about all this.
You're talking about the statistics that Bisi mentioned as well.
That's right. Now, looking into our educational system, for example, which actually has to be the driver into employment, right? Now, I actually wouldn't agree with some policies that the government has. Now, look at it in this way. We have our NYSC graduates, for example. So our graduates going into NYSC. I can't fathom how NYSC students, graduates, what's it called? Corpus, right, will go into our schools to be teachers. These people are still half-baked. They need to be mentored themselves. They need to be tutored themselves. And you send these people to go into our primary schools, into our secondary schools. What sort of impact, what sort of knowledge do you want these people to impact on this student? Now, when you don't look into this policy properly, honestly, we will be implementing a policy whereby it wouldn't bring us what we're actually looking for in the future, as in terms of educational standards. Now, if we don't have a good educational standards from the beginning, from nursery, primary, and secondary school, believe me, I mean, everything that comes afterward is just going to go down the drain. That's why we don't have employable graduates. That's some of the problems. Now, let's look into our educational system properly. Stop using NYSC corpus to go and teach in our schools. They still have baked. Now, they should be used as classroom support staff or assistants. They should be supporting the teachers who are well trained and groomed to train them, because teaching is not just bringing in, economics and no. You should know how to mentor, you should know how to coordinate, you should know how to lecture, you should know. It entails a lot of things, and these people are still, we should learn how to crawl.
So we should be sending core members, for instance, to sectors where we need to begin to build entrepreneurial skills, because already that's one of the issues that we have in schools as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not saying they shouldn't use them in our educational system as well, but they should be going in as support staff, not as teachers.
So, Bisi, let's talk about that multidimensional aspect.
Yes.
Multidimensionally poor was actually mentioned in that index. It talked about over 43% of households in Nigeria are multidimensionally poor. Yeah. What does this mean? What makes a household multidimensionally poor? Let's use that word.
When you're looking at that concept or context, you have to talk about standard of living. Standard of living. In Nigeria, we are building houses that we don't have road networks to get into those houses. That's one. Water is part of it. And when you look at our schools, when I'm talking about schools, I'm talking about primary schools, public primary schools. You have kids that are going into those classrooms with empty stomach, and it's been researched that when a student, while you are hungry, you can't learn. So that is poverty. And in that report again, they talk about something about deprivation. that there are so many things that we have been deprived of in this country, and that's talking about multidimensional concept of poverty. You see, poverty, wealth is more than having money to spend.
Yeah.
Is more than having money to spend. You see, poverty is not about money alone. Poverty is about every other thing that matters. We're talking about even emotional state of our citizens. Look at people in the northeast of Nigeria. They are not emotionally stable, and that's poverty. And that's actually one of the things that they are looking at in this because because the theme of this report talks about building resilience, ability to come back after setbacks. We don't have that in Nigeria. Yeah. And so all of these things are what they are taking into account. But what we are looking at, we still have to talk about that. We're looking at statistics that they are reeling out every day. Thankfully, our economy is growing, but it has to translate to my cousin in Oshobo